Hello and welcome to Stephanie B. Creativity. Today I am here with a fun little house project. We're going to make a little kind of a stone cottage this time. Last time for my part of my prototyping, I used some really bright, colorful, soft yarn. And to make this really sweet pincushiony type cottage, it's also a really great soft toy, so if you wanted to make a bunch and have a little village, go for it. I haven't done any of the embroidery or duplicate stitch or anything like that on this one because I was still working out my design. So for today's version, with Lion Brand Wool Ease in the Natural Heather and the Big Twist yarn from Joanne in Heather. Everything's Heather today. I have already run these tubes through. I have not stretched them yet, so they haven't been stretched into shape yet. I have one tube that is 70 rows, two tubes that are 25 rows, and two tubes that are 30 rows. So we've got this one, which we're going to stretch now. This is the floor and the gable ends. So it will go like that. These, the 25s, are the side walls, kind of like that. And the 30s are the roof, feeling kind of like a thatched, weathered thatch roof. And that's the basic shape right there. However, we have some things that we need to do to get these completely ready to be stitched together. So first off, I'm just finishing up stretching. Stretching just pops all of your stitches into place. You don't have to block this. This is a soft toy. I did not use waste yarn, so I'm going to pull my ends and then flatten them out like this, and pull the end and kind of flatten it out for all of my pieces. So I'm going to do that. I'll be right back. So something I found out on the cast on edge, if you stick your hand inside when you're pulling it, you don't end up with it pulling down tight, and it's a little bit easier to roll those fluffy edges to the inside. Just like that. And on the cast off edge, it's already pretty cleaned up and easy to adjust. There. So that's what it looks like after we have stretched and flattened. I'm going to get another pic. So now I've stretched and flattened everything. We need to get the gable ends made. The gable ends are on this really long one. So we're going to slip these over to the side. And we are going to make the gable ends. This is a cute little house that does not require a lot of precision. To make our gable ends, we're going to go ahead and draw in these ends like this. All right. Don't cut this off. We're going to use our long thread, our long yarn here, to stitch the gables together. To start off with, though, I want to just secure the yarn so that this end stays as tightly closed as possible. Cinch it down. Now you've got that center point right there where this string is coming out of. You're going to fold your corner and fold your corner. So look at that. We're folding it in like this. And that's going to make our pointed little gable. Let's stitch that down. And it can be stitched down whatever way makes you happy. I'm going to go 8 right here, just to get my yarn down to where I need it to be. And I'm going to fold it in and fold it in like that. We can do some shaping and mushing. I'm going to roll that gathered bit right here. I'm going to roll it to the inside. So then when we're stitching, we have a little bit more of a point, and you don't get that gather showing up. I like that. Sometimes I'm figuring things out as I am explaining it to you guys, because every time you do something like this, you come up with new ideas. Now I'm just going to whip stitch this edge down to the inside. Don't pull too tightly, and make sure that you're not stitching through to the other side. So I'm just going to whip stitch this down. You're going to see that the two pieces come together right here. I'm just going to stitch across, give it an extra little stitch. I'm going to tie a little through knot here, loop, run your needle through it, pull, and then just bury the thread. Now what I'm going to do is go over here. The only thing that's tricky here is you've got to make sure that you do your fold in on the same side. Don't flip it over and then do your fold in, right? Now we've got our gable ends, and they actually match pretty well. They don't have to match perfectly. This is a rustic cottage. Oh, so cool. All right, so I'm going to go like that and say, let's see. So then that will be a side and the other will be a side. I am going to go ahead and just even though I didn't use waste yarn, I can use my crochet hook, close these ends. Because I can see the loops coming through here, I want to close these ends so that they are tidy. So all I'm going to do is pick up the thread that's going over the cast on line or cast off line. See, look at that. I'm just going to go in and pick up the loop. I'm not picking up the thread, that cast on line or cast off line. I'm just letting that ride along, but it's showing me where that very top loop is. And if the loop pulls down, you've got that line to pull your loop back up. Another way to close the ends, you've got your cast off or cast on yarn right here, and you can see where the little bumps are going over the thread, right? You can join up those little loops really quickly with this thread. So the yarn is coming out. Don't go back through the first hole where the yarn is coming out of, or you'll start losing your stitches. But if I skip that one, so right here, see where I've got the yarn is coming through? I'm going to skip that one and go to the next one. Right there. Then I'm just going to go back and forth, and I'm going to pick up those loops. Just going back and forth to close up this end. It's actually a lot faster than crocheting the end. And since we're going to be doing a like a slip stitch join for the walls to the gables to put the house together, it doesn't have to be absolutely the most stunning type of join. Although this join is really quite pretty because it ends up looking kind of woven on the end. It looks a little more rustic. Once you've got it though, you've got it. It's done. And it is really quick, where the stitched or slip stitched join or slip stitched closure when you don't use waste yarn, because, well, I didn't use any waste yarn. A slip stitch closure without waste yarn is a little bit more tricky just because it's harder to see the stitches. But this, the stitches don't end up getting pulled tight. So it's easier to keep track of all of them. And I actually love doing hand stitching. So, but look at that. It's already closed. I'm going to tug on it just a smidge. Just remember that this yarn is actually the yarn that went through the whole end to begin with. Oh, look how pretty that is. I like it. I'm going to sort of run back, do my little loop and catch, loop and catch. So I'm going to get all of my ends closed up this way, I think. Now it's time to start stitching this together. I'm going to add yarn. So I want to get all of my ends worked in before I go any farther. So I'm going to get all my ends in. All right, all the pieces are all tidied up and ready to be assembled. I'm going to take some yarn here, and I am doing an outside surface stitching. So I'm going to join this with my crochet hook, not the needle. I decided. I've got my ball of Lion Brand Wool Ease. When you're stitching this on. All right. I'm going to stitch this on, and I'm going to do it with a surface binding edge type crochet, like you would attach granny squares together, basically. You've got your loop. You're going to poke your crochet hook under two legs to start off with. You're going to pull that loop through and then grab your long yarn coming off the ball and pull it through. Now I go back and I take my little tail and I tighten it down because I have my long loop coming through. This tail is going to stay on the inside. I'm going to take that off now since I'm already on this side here. And I am going to go across, wrap my yarn around, and pull it through. Go to the next stitch right here. I'm going to go through, grab the yarn, and pull through. Now I'm just going to work my way back and forth. I've gone back to the other side. I'm going to go under 2 stitches, or under 2 legs, pull through. And now what I'm going to do, I'm not going to go to the next stitch. I'm going to skip a stitch, go across, and pull through. And I'm going to not go to that stitch there. I'm going to skip a stitch, go across, and pull through. And by skipping the stitch, I'm going to end up with the same number of stitches on the sides. Because I'm skipping every other one, I'm going to end up with the same number of stitches down this edge as I have rows or columns going, or rows going up. If you went into every single stitch, you would have twice as many stitches. You see what I mean? Because if you went up on this side and did 20 stitches, and you went up on the other side and did 20 stitches, you'd have 40 stitches in an area where there's only 20. So you don't want to end up with a lot of extra stitches. And this makes a really pretty little zigzag going back and forth. So it's going to look pretty on the finished project. So I'm not going in this stitch. I'm moving over one, grab my yarn, and pull through. Now I'm going to the other side, And I'm keeping my yarn underneath. There. You see how there's a thread pulling out of that stitch? You don't want to go into that one. You want to go to the next one. Wrap over and pull through. Not the one with the leg coming out of it, but the next one. See? Not the one right here where everything's coming out of that junction, you see? Not that stitch, the next one that there's no tension on. Not this one. See how that's coming out there? Move over one. Just take your time and get that very last stitch, because you want to make sure your corners are joined tightly. And then my last stitch here. And tighten it down. Look at that. All right, so that is my first edge joined. And look how nicely that sits up. All right. You've got a nice little foundation on that. I'll get the other side on, and then I will come back and I'll show you how I'm going to join the roof. Grab my big twist heather yarn to start stitching on the roof. What I'm going to do is go ahead and just mark my columns that I want to stitch through. And this is an experiment. It's always an experiment. When I'm doing things, it's always an experiment, because I might think of a better way to do something. Like right now, I'm trying to make sure that I line up and have the same size overlap on each end. That it is not critical that your columns are pointing the same direction, because we're not doing mattress stitch. We're doing the same crocheted join. And I don't really need to lock those two together on the end here. Get my slip knot, my crochet hook. Oh, this is a 4mm crochet hook. Use whatever size crochet hook gets you the size loops that you like here. I happen to like the size 4 with this yarn because it gets about the same size stitches as what the knit stitches are. I'm going to join at the second stitch from the end, join my thread, and I'm putting the crochet hook in and then grabbing the loop and pulling it through, and then making one chain, and then pulling it down nice and tight, grabbing onto the other tail of my chain loop. So I'm in the second stitch from the end, and now I am just going to do my going back and forth exactly the same. And so I will meet you back here when I have both roof pieces attached. All right, this is what it looks like from the inside. And this is what it looks like from the outside. I like these little details that are happening here. It's giving it a nice little detail along that eave edge. Kind of stretching this up to make it so that the sides fit. And I probably should have done my sides a little bit longer. But you know what? It's all part of the charm of this. Remember, it's all an experiment. What I'm going to do for the ends, I am going to fit the sides together, And I'm going to use this yarn that's already here and basically do the same thing, but because I stitched these closed, I'm not sure how it's going to work. I'm going to pretend that I've already got my slip knot here. I'm just going to pull it through because it's already attached. And then make my knot, my slip knot. Go over to the other side. And then I'm just going to go in the edge. Like that. I think that's all I'm going to have to do. Skip one. And then I'm going to say I'm skipping this one and going into the next column. I think that'll work. Oh yeah, that's going to work just fine. Skip that one, go in here. Skip this column, go into the next one. Just want to make sure that I end up with this part of the roof, or this part of the gable, where my stitching sort of ended. I want to kind of line that up and have it just hit right here at the roof edge. Across. Okay. There. Oh, that looks good. That looks good. I'm going to sew this. I'm going to stitch this underneath this edge, right up to the center there. I'm going to leave this top edge open, but I'm going to sew this. So I'm going to get my needle, and I'm going to use the long yarn from the roof. Make sure that my yarn is coming from underneath. I'm just going to run it through the corner. I want to reinforce that corner a little bit, so I'm going to come back and around. See how that's right in there? And then I am going to go ahead and tie this in a knot. And I am going to make it so that this is overhanging just a little bit. Right there. See? I want this end to overhang just a little bit. So I'm just going to line it up, hold on to it, and I'm going to do a stitch where I'm going to try and hide those stitches. I'm not going to, I don't want these stitches to show on the gable. So I'm going to go through. Let me pick up on this side. So I'm going to go underneath of a stitch like that. And then I'm going to come back and go underneath the stitch like that. And then go across a stitch here. So I'm going to go across, and I'm going to go underneath a stitch, and then the next stitch over I'm going to go underneath. So I'm going under those two legs there, but that way it's basically making a running stitch, but the legs aren't going over the top of everything. You don't see it as much. You might see it a little bit, but you won't see it as much. Then under column, and then back across, and then back under, and then under. Try and keep your overlap going on there. We are going to be stuffing this with toy stuffing, so I'm not too worried about it being a lumpy, because it's going to be lumpy. The toy stuffing makes it really nice for using this as a pincushion or using it as an actual, quiet time toy. It's always nice to have quiet time toys. Let's see here. I think I'm going to go up 2 on that one and then come back. There we go. You want it to be, firmly attached. So let's see, how's that look? That actually looks really good. All right, I'm going to stitch this off right to that center join. Make sure that it's attached. I don't want to completely attach this down because I want to join my 2 roof pieces at the top. I just want it to come up basically lined up with that center of the cinching and give it a good firm multi times around. Not necessarily knot, well, a knot. I'm going to go in now and just start joining all these and getting the ends connected. So I'll come back when we are just to the point where we're going to finish off the top of the roof. And before we do that, we're going to stuff it. All right. We are at the point right now where you could make a decision. You could make a decision to make this into a little handbag. Just put a little button clasp on the top, or a little tiny notions bag where you could put, needles and threads and stitch markers and things like that down inside. Get this on the needle. I am going to stitch this shut after I put some stuffing in, and this is just some polyfill. Take a wad of the stuffing and drop it down inside. Sort of fit it down into the corners. And I like to kind of dig a hole in the middle of my stuffing to put more stuffing in. And right now, this looks really misshapen. But you know what? I think it's just there's a little too much stuffing inside. And the cool thing here, you can mush and squish, and this is going to be a really sweet little, the little walls bowing out now. Sweet little house, little cottage. And I'm going to crochet along here. There's a couple little gaps. I will use my needle and thread or needle and yarn to catch those. But I think I'm going to go ahead and put a nice distinct ridge up on the top here. So I'm going to go through, just like stitching the walls together. Mush this thing around. Yeah, I like having that sharper point or sharper edge across the top. If you come up with a better way, I think that the drawstring method for the gable is good and it is easy, but it's not as sharp as the tucking it inside type. I got a more pointy point on this other one here when I took my tube and tucked the corners in. But it's still good. It's still good. Now I'm just going to stitch the roof and that last point of the gable. See, go under the stitch into the roof. There we go. I really like this. Oh gosh, I love this so much. So it was made, ooh, there, see? And it works as a pincushion. It works as, you know, a place to put your stitch markers. Isn't that sweet? I really like how this one came together. This is my third one that I've done of my little houses. I'm starting to get a little village together too, aren't I? I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please make sure to click that like button, subscribe to the channel if you found value in this channel and you plan on coming back to watch more. I'd really appreciate you being here. Remember, go out, do something creative, take care of yourself, and be kind. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.